This is the historic Mabee Farm House. Built in 1705, it's one of the oldest houses anywhere in New York State and gives us a fantastic look into what everyday life was like for people in the colonial period. The Mabees built their house themselves out of materials they could find on their own property, like timber and stone. Some portions of the structure were built with brick, but those wouldn't come until later. In fact, in 1705, this house was much smaller than what you see today. When Jan and Annette Mabee came to live here, it was only a single-room structure. Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren would add on to the structure as the family grew in size and wealth. So as we enter the house, feel free to look around and make observations. This first room we've entered is in fact an addition and was not here in 1705. As we move into this further back room, we're entering the original part of the structure. This was the tiny space that they raised their family in. Since people have lived in this house for more than 300 years, of course the interior would change over the centuries. What we've done is we've taken our best evidence available and recreated what the space would have looked like in 1705.
All right, class, welcome inside the Mabee house, inside the historic house. We are in that oldest section of the Mabee house. So remember, in 1705, when Annette and Jan Mabee came and made this place their home, this was really all that their house was, just this one single room for them and their family. And remember, at this time, they had 10 kids in total, but only 8 kids were living with them at that time. But still, imagine 10 people sharing this one little room. You don't have a lot of privacy. You don't have a lot of space. If you're mad at your brothers or sisters, you can't just go to your room and slam the door. Well, because you don't have a room and there wouldn't be a door to slam in the first place. So, the Mabees, they'd be pretty tightly packed in here. That's just the way things were back then. They considered themselves lucky just to have a roof over their head. But thinking about it that way, it's not like the Mabees would spend a whole lot of time in here if they could avoid it, right? Because remember, most of their lives, most of the work that they do, it's all happening outside, right? They're farmers, so they have to be out doing some kind of farm chores. That's the adults, that's the kids, pretty much anyone who was old enough to walk was old enough to work. So what kind of farm chores would they be doing? Well, this time of year, it's spring, right? We're in May, so they would would have all the fields plowed by now. They would have all the crops sown. That is to say, the seeds would be in the ground. But there's always more things to do, like chopping firewood and taking care of the animals and, making tools and traveling back and forth to Schenectady. There's always something to be done, and it's always a lot of work. Now, speaking of those crops, remember the Mabees, as farmers, probably their most important crop would be wheat. Wheat to make these nice wheaty breads, which would have been what we call the staple of their diet. That is to say, this was probably the most important thing, their most important source of food.
In fact, the Mabees' entire calendar year would be based around growing wheat. In this picture, we've skipped ahead a little bit to the end of summer and the beginning of fall, when the harvest season would begin, and the whole family would spend pretty much every day out harvesting their wheat crop. Those long golden stalks are the wheat plant, and you can see these are some reenactors engaged in cutting them down with hand tools. It's kind of like trying to mow your lawn with scissors, except in this case, your lawn is as large as about 10 football fields. Even after harvesting, your work isn't done. Here we can see a young reenactor threshing the wheat, which is the process of separating the edible grain from the inedible stalk. He uses a flail, which is 2 pieces of wood tied together, basically as a beating stick to physically knock all those edible grains off the stalk. It's a pretty energetic process, and it takes the wind out of you pretty quickly. It's hard to convey in a single video just how much work would be needed to make a single loaf of bread. But make no mistake, if the Maybes didn't do this work, well, then they would have gone hungry.
The Maybes were also dairy farmers, so they could have some cheeses or some milks and butters. Now, we'll show you the milks and the butters in a later video, so we'll kind of put that aside for now. Beyond that, anything else that the Maybes would want to eat, if they wanted some leafy green vegetables, well, they'd have to grow those too, right? And they would have a kitchen garden outside that they could take care of. They could tend to that. They'd be working long, long hours, basically as long as the sun was up, as long as they could see, and as long as it wasn't, thunder and lightning outside, they would be out working. Let's say 12, 14 hours, they'd be out there, they'd be coming back in at the end of the day, hot and tired and hungry, probably pretty hungry, and they'd all come and they'd gather around the fireplace here, or the hearth, whatever you want to call it. This is a Dutch jamless style fireplace. It shows again that the Maybes were still Dutch in their culture, right? So they have a lot of space to work here. That's kind of the cool thing about these Dutch jamless fireplaces. They give you a lot of room to work. So that Mrs. Maybe, Annette Maybe, she'd be spending a lot of time here. She'd be doing the cooking. She'd be boiling water for teas or for cleaning things. So really, this is like the center of the household. And when the sun goes down and there's no electric lights in 1705, this would be their only source of light. It would be their only source of heat. So it's really going to be the only comfortable space in the entire house. Now, especially in wintertime, it's not winter today, but in the wintertime, when it's freezing cold outside, this is probably the only place that's even slightly warm. These houses, these old farmhouses in the 18th century, could get freezing cold. Even with a roaring fire, your house might be sitting at a pretty chilly 50 degrees, and that's if you're lucky, right? So this is the Dutch fireplace, the center of life inside the house. Now this space, it does have an upstairs and it does have a downstairs, like let's say a basement and an attic, but those are not living spaces. Again, you don't really want people to be living there or having beds there or anything like that, because those spaces are not very comfortable by human standards, right? In the summertime, the upstairs space gets very, very kind of humid and dry, and it's not a good place to be. In the wintertime, the upstairs is just unbearably cold because it's so far away from the fire, right? The further away you are from the fire, the less habitable a space is. So really no one wants to be spending much time upstairs. Same thing with the basement. The basement would be wet, it would be kind of damp, it would be kind of clammy and cold. You don't necessarily want to be living there, but those are great storage spaces. For dry goods go up top, and kind of more like vegetables, things you refrigerate today would go down in the root cellar or the basement, right? So, as far as your meal is concerned, you might have a nice meal, but then there's really nothing to do but go to sleep, because you have to wake up and you have to do this whole thing all over again the next day. Again, another long day of work awaits you. Now the kids, I hate to break it to you kids, but you would have to sleep right here on the floor. There's just no room for beds for 8 kids. That is impossible. That's not going to happen. So the kids would sleep on the floor. They might have some straw mats or something, but they're so tired they would probably just go right up on these floorboards and take a nap or take a sleep just like that. However, the parents get a small bit of comfort. Alright, so that small bit of comfort that the parents would have is a bed like this. We call it a pencil post bed, because it has these 4 pencil-like posts on the end here. So you might think it's unfair that mom and dad get to sleep in a nice, comfy bed, but I guarantee you this bed is not that nice, it's not that comfy. So yes, the mattress is not very comfortable. You might be able to hear the crinkly straw inside, right? This is a very thin, floppy, lifeless mattress here. Not very comfortable by our standards. And then underneath that we have these ropes here, and that is what is supporting you all night. And I've lied down in this bed before, and it's pretty good for the first 5 minutes. But after that, you really get sick. But that's just the way things were back then. They were used to, they were actually glad to have a nice, comfortable bed like this. Now, if they wanted a little bit more comfort in their lives, they have a kind of a woolen blanket here, but the Maybes might also want to get their hands on some of these. Now, these are furs, This is the most valuable fur of all. This is a beaver fur, right? Remember, beavers were the most valuable trade commodity for the Dutch and then later the English, right? So it would connect these European colonists to, well, the people living out west, the Native Americans, the Haudenosaunee people, who would be the ones supplying these furs. They would go out, they would trap the beavers, they would hunt the beavers, and they would travel down the Mohawk River to Schenectady or to Albany to trade these with the Europeans that lived there. And the Mabies actually had an interesting connection to the Mohawks. In fact, Annette Mabie, Mrs. Mabie, her mother, or Grandma Mabie, you could call her Grandma Mabie, she was a Mohawk woman who had come from her village out west to live in Schenectady. She married a Dutch man, and the two of them raised, well, a family together in Schenectady. And one of those children they raised was Annette, and Annette came to live here. So if they maybe saw some Haudenosaunee people, maybe some Mohawk traders coming down the river, they might actually know these people. They might even be related to these people. So I'm sure on many occasions those Mohawks would stop here at the Mabie house and visit and maybe do some trading as well. Now we do have some more furs here, like this little bunny rabbit here, or how about this little weasel guy here. But these, they were valuable, but they weren't quite as valuable as the beaver. They're not as big, they're not as soft, they're not as valuable. Again, this, with its very soft fur, would make a much more expensive coat or hat. Now, if the Mabies wanted to trade with the Native Americans, the Native Americans would be supplying the furs, right? All right, so if the Mabies, they wanted to trade with the Mohawks or with the Haudenosaunee who'd be passing by, they had some options, right? So, of course, the Native Americans would be supplying the furs. That's what the Europeans want. Well, what did the Native Americans want in exchange? Well, one thing that they could get would be these right here. We have a couple of different things here. So, we have these shells. These shells, you can't find them around here. They come from the ocean. So they would be brought up here and turned into little tiny beads like these. I don't even know if you can see how small that bead is. It's a small little white bead. You could also make a purple bead out of it, right? There's two different colors to the shell, so you could make different beads. Now these beads, once you make a couple thousand of them, you could turn into a belt of wampum like this. This is just, again, a bunch of beads kind of laced together with this leather cording here. And this was very important in Mohawk culture. This would serve a lot of different functions. First of all, it would be used, again, to symbolize something else. You could call it like a social currency, not like money, but something a little bit more significant. You see, office holders or people of importance in Mohawk culture, they would have a belt of wampum to show their office or to show their position. So like a chief or a clan mother in Mohawk villages would have belts of wampum to show that they had this office. You could also use belts like these to commemorate treaties or encode messages or record histories. You see how there's little images in here? So here we have like a tree. This to me looks like a wolf. This looks like a turtle. This looks like the river, the Mohawk River, but I'm not really sure. This is a reproduction, so for all I know, it could mean just about anything. But these belts of wampum were very prized by the Native Americans, and Europeans could often trade them beads or shells or belts of wampum as kind of as an exchange for the furs. Other things that the Mohawks might want would be more manufactured goods that the Europeans could make, things like iron hatchets or knives or cooking pots. Those things, again, were very prized by the Native Americans because they couldn't make those quite so easily where they were, so they would come to the Europeans and get those. Muskets as well. Again, muskets would be a very valuable thing. And textiles or clothing. Again, the Europeans had large textile mills back in Europe, and they could create a lot of fabric, a lot of clothing relatively easily, and so the Iroquois would want to trade for that as well. So just a few little things that the natives and the Europeans could trade. So, you kids might be wondering where the bathroom is, right? This is a one-room house. Unfortunately, there's no modern plumbing back in 1705, no toilets or anything like that. So if they wanted to use the bathroom, their most comfortable option might be to go outside, actually. We do have an outhouse out that window there. that the Maybes could use. When the weather was nice, they could go out to the outhouse and take care of business. But gotta imagine when the weather was not so nice, if it was raining or snowing or dark outside, and maybe Jan, maybe he's getting older, right? He doesn't necessarily want to go outside to use the restroom. Well, for that, they would have one of these. This is a chamber pot. You can see it's a very simple piece of clay pottery here. And yeah, this would be your bathroom. When it was necessary, you would use the necessary, right? You got to imagine that isn't very fun because there's not any privacy here. Remember, and then probably the least fun part is someone has to clean this up in the morning when it's all ready to go. So definitely that would be one of the chores that the kids would have to do, and I think you can be lucky, can consider yourself lucky that you don't have to do that chore today.
We're going to wrap this video up by taking a look through the side building you may have seen at the beginning of the video. This is the brick house, and it was built in 1767, long after Jan and Annette were living here. You can see on the ground floor it's a pretty well-appointed little cottage. Older members of the Maybe family would come to live here, like widows and grandparents and in-laws too. Hopefully this video was able to give you at least a peek into the everyday life of the Maybe family. But we haven't talked about everyone who lived at the Maybe farm. While the Maybes worked hard and were able to enjoy the benefits of their hard work, not everyone had that same freedom. In fact, there were generations of people living here at the Maybe farm who had no freedoms at all. This brings us to the subject of slavery. It's a pretty big subject in its own right, and so it's going to get its own video. I recommend you go check out that video on our channel, because right now, you only really know part of the story.